Hello, everyone. What a start of Agency Advantage, and thanks to Khushbu and Brent. So it was a really nice session on the Agentic era, and I can see a lot of people are tuning in from different part of the world, which is very great. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce uh, the new guest speaker. He is appearing on the Cloudways stage first time. So he will give the session on the future of agencies, how you can build your agencies using AI. So we have Ronik Patil from Weam AI, and he is also the partner and the sponsor of this event. So thanks to him to support this event. So we have Ronik on the stage. So without wasting any time, Ronik, we can start your session. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Danish. In May of 2006, 20 years ago, I moved to the United States. I was 18 years old. I didn't speak English in a brand new country. It was a hard time, but slowly and gradually, I learned how people worked, how food worked, how culture worked. And I started calling the US my home. It wasn't at an 18-year-old, it wasn't just a changing the country, but it was adopting a complete new way of working. When I see AI today, I'm seeing a similar pattern. I'm not seeing it as just a technological change, but I'm seeing it as a completely new way of working. And when that happens, the questions aren't really technical. The questions are about, are you going to adopt it? Are you going to resist it? And what are you willing to change? That's what this talk is about. I'm Ronik Patil. I've ran my agency for 10 plus years. I started in 2016. I know some of you may have started before me, some of you have probably started after me. One thing that has remained constant in the agency is that we get paid for delivering value to our clients. Is how we deliver that value, that's the shift that's happening. And a few years ago, I saw that this shift is coming in a big way. I sold my agency to E2M in 2024. And ever since, I've been working on figuring it out how best to bring AI into organizations. One of the things that I'm doing right now is working within the E2M's internal team and driving the AI adaptation across their organizations in their SEO department, content department, WordPress departments. And that's what I'll be talking about today. By heart, I'm still an agency owner, and I love building these AI systems that helps agency ecosystem move forward. Today's talk is not going to be a lot theory. It's really practically showing what we have been building and what we are learning from it. One thing is clear, more and more manual work is moving to agents, AI-enabled systems, or workflows. And when that happens, agencies, we should be really asking this question, what is the shift? And a lot of people in the industry are calling this shift software plus service shift. Now, you may ask me, as an agency, we have always used software for delivery, right? For your project management system, your SEO tools, analytics tools, CRM system, CMS system. So how is this different? And that's true. The way it's different is the definition of software itself is changing. So traditionally speaking, software was more of a static tool. It didn't decide things for us. It didn't do things for us. The humans still draw the process. What's beginning to change now is there are systems that can take end-to-end goal and work on the task for you, and they're actually becoming big part of that delivery. And those changes are significant changes. And that new model is where it used to be that the humans did most of the work and software helped where needed. And now software will be doing a lot of the work and humans will loop in as needed. And I know for some of you this may seem like a drastic, and I'm not saying this is happening tomorrow, but I'll be showing you some of the things that we've been doing it and how we are thinking about it and how practically implementing this into an agency operation. At E2M, they have about more than 350 people, primarily, working with digital agencies, helping them with dev, marketing, AI services, and content. You just heard Khushbu on the stage. So for them, this is a big question. If you don't adopt AI at that scale, there's a lot to lose internally, right? So investing early on makes sense. What we learned is that AI isn't about just adopting tools. If you give tools to people, not only that they're expensive, but if you just give tools to the people, they'll use it, they'll experiment with it, they'll have more tabs open. But when we looked at the bottom line for the business, there it didn't really move the needle in a positive way. We weren't really building any systems to deliver the work. That's something we learned early on. So a couple of years ago, a lot of experimentation around GPTs and spending more time learning how to better prompt. It was a fun learning experience, but not a lot of gain for productivity. The phase two last year, then we focused a lot more on the automations. How do you connect tools? How can we reduce manual steps in the processes? There are some useful gain there, but it's not going to drastically change, or fundamentally it isn't changing how the delivery of the work happens. What we've been thinking recently from the past 8 months is not about just experimentations or automations, but thinking at a foundation level. How do we replace or update the workflows so that the AI fits in from the step one, rather than having it bolt on later on? The biggest take from for us from this process is that AI won't fit your old processes. If you are not willing to change the old process, it's going to be hard to get any marginal gain out of bringing AI in your processes. So what we started thinking about is redesigning some of those processes and systems from scratch, thinking about how we can leverage AI in those processes. And that's when we started seeing marginal gaps. So what I'll be doing next is walk you through 3 examples, and I'll show you exactly how we have been doing this. The first example is for the SEO team. The SEO team works with more than 100 agencies doing anywhere from 500 to 1,000 articles a month. And when you're doing that volume of work, before even a word gets written, you have to find out what topic you're writing for, right? And this is an SEO and a content department. So the manual work goes something like this. You pick a keyword, and then you would Google search that keyword, other related keywords you'd search for. You'll open sites that are ranking right now, you'll read through the blogs and trying to get sense of what's ranking right now, what's being talked about that keyword. This is how, we've been doing it for ages. SEO teams been doing this. The new thing is now you'd search across LLM models and see how models are responding to those keywords or the prompts related to that keyword. You'll browse platforms like Reddit to see what people are talking on that subject. And after all of that thinking and researching, from a gut feeling, SEO person or a content writer person will come up with a topic to write next about. So this process, when we measured it, was taking about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, which you think it's not a lot, but when that 20 to 30 minute goes across 500 to 1,000 articles a month, it equals to over 600 hours, right? So then it becomes a problem that's it's not per se a problem, but it becomes a good opportunity area for AI to step in. So what we'll do is we'll build this workflow together for this problem statement or for this opportunity area. We'll build this workflow together. The idea is that from this talk, you get a real experience about how do you approach these things. And your example may be different. The idea is to inspire you as you walk through that workflow. You'd get a better understanding about how to do it. So this is the first example is a very simple workflow. And the next examples that will go into a little bit more agentic systems. So the workflow here is the step one is you have a keyword, right? That's where the SEO person or the content writer started with. And what they need is they need a topic generated, right? That the content writer should write about. This process, what's the first thing that you should do? You can answer in chat. The first thing to do is, before you do anything, you'll expand that keyword using SEO APIs. We use data for SEO to do this. So from one keyword, you would create a group of keywords, related keywords from that keyword you started with. The example I'm taking here is, let's assume you are a digital agency, which you are, and you work with the dentist as your niche, and you want to write an article on your website because dentists are your niche, and the keyword that you started with is digital marketing for dentist here, right? From that keyword, what this first step did is it expanded that keyword into multiple related terms that have a good search volume, and this is done using third party APIs, in this case data for SEO. Once you have this keyword groups created, you can group those keywords by different search intent, like informational, commercial keywords, local, comparison, etc. Once you have this step done, now what you have is you have a bunch of keywords. Let's, for example, say you have 10 keywords. What do you do next after you have those 10 keywords? You take those keywords, use Google search SERP API and APIs from different LLM tools, and for each of those keyword, you'll collect data and what's being ranked on Google search, for example, and what's being talked about in the LLM as their answers, and you will collect all that data. So for each keyword, you would search the top 10 ranking Google results, and you will collect all their actual blogs or landing pages that are ranking there right now. And once you have all that data, that's a lot of data around, from one keyword. Now you have 10 keywords, and each keyword's 10 pages. So 100 pages that are ranking right now in the Google. You've collected all that information to find out what's the angle here. When you are writing about that subject area, you have wealth of information available now. Once you have that information available, what do you do? You'll use that data and give all that data in a structuredized way with your system prompt to an LLM model to find out what's the gap here. What are the buyer questions around this topic? What's the real audience demand? Because you've also looked through Reddit, if you remember from the previous step. So you have all that data, and you're using all that data to really find, finding a gap that's mapped against the buyer demand. Once you have done this, now it's the step that you'd actually create a topic. But in order, before you create a topic, you'll use all the information that was collected in the previous steps, like the keyword, the related keywords, search engine ranking, who's ranking, what are they talking about, what's LLM talking about, demand signals. At this step, we'll also pair it with the business brief, because whoever, in this case, it's you as an agency, then information about you as an agency will also pull your sitemap from your website. This way, what happens is whatever topic ideas we are generated, we want to make sure that these are new topic ideas and not something that you have already talked about on your website. So that's where we use your sitemap for. With using all that information, you would come up with 10, 20, 30 topic ideas that a human would get involved at this step now. So what they used to do is they were spending about 20-30 minutes to even come to this step, and they had nothing to really show for. Everything was in their brain. Instead, now all that data is collected, structured, and they have options to choose from. Once you select one of the options, one of the topics that you like to go for, we don't stop here, because let's make the content writer's life easier as well. Since you have all that information, what you can do in the last step is use all of that information to also create a very detailed SEO brief. So for example, when you collected or scraped the top ranking articles for that keyword right now, you can look at what length they had, right? So instead of just giving a topic to a writer, giving them a detailed brief along with that, the current ranking, it seems like around 700 or 1700 words articles are ranking in the Google. So figuring it out, those length of the articles, how should the article in terms of its H1, H2, H3 hierarchy should look like. You could use all that data you collected in the previous step for this step. And this is exactly what we are doing right now across anywhere from 500 to 1,000 articles. And it's saving hundreds of hours from the SEO team. What we did in this example is we had a started with a clear starting input. In this case, it was starting with an keyword. That's going to be a consistent input every time. Then we used multiple data sources. It wasn't just all about AI, right? Data for SEO, using Google SERP API, using Reddit API, using Twitter API. So it's really nothing about AI at that step. We just used multiple third-party data sources to collect information. And then adding AI only where it adds judgment. When you have a lot of data, and if you want, someone to go through that data, analyze that data, and give you a right signals out of that data, AI really shines when you have tasks like that. That's when we use it. And having an appropriate human approval gate when it's needed. So we don't go from having topics to outline to actual blog generated. Just part of that process is we're taking that process and having appropriate human approval gate. Now this would depend on what your workflow is and what you're trying to automate. It would change accordingly. What you get when you're doing is you're getting a repeatable output that you can trust, and ultimately a measurable input for your agency's bottom line. In this case, it was hundreds of hours saved. Okay. The next example that I'll be talking about is a little bit bigger. The first example was a small piece of an entire workflow that we are automating. Here we were a bit more ambitious. We thought, can we take Figma designs? The agency partners we work with, they give us Figma designs and we'll do a WordPress build on it. I know a lot of you are WordPress agencies. And when you are doing, going from Figma to WordPress build, the typical process looks like this. Project manager will review that Figma. They'll brief the developer on what the project is about, how many features the site has, what plugins you'll need to use, how many forms are there, etc., etc. The developer will also go through the entire Figma design, and then the big part about actually coding the entire site, right? Whether in the backend of a WordPress you're using ACF or some page builder like Elementor, but developer is building that site then from Figma design into a WordPress sites, and then a QA and multiple rounds of client revision. So all in all, this is a very time-consuming process. At E2M, there's about 100 plus WordPress developers, and there are thousands of hours a month that goes into this process. So the goal was, can we build an end-to-end agentic system where we can give a Figma file and can get the output as a WordPress site? Now, there are 2 or 3 providers out there who claim to do this. We have tried all of them. They don't really work, nowhere even close to. Our goal was 100%, but we still wanted that 70% as a target, that if we can achieve it. And this has been going on for a while. And I'll show you exactly what we did and where we are right now and what we learned along the process. So the first step, this was couple years ago when ChatGPT, Claude wasn't as popular, and Gemini wasn't even as popular. ChatGPT was, and we've been thinking about it since then. And what we did is we literally took screenshots of the Figma design. We gave it to ChatGPT, like as a screenshot of an entire landing page, and gave ChatGPT to build that page. Well, ChatGPT did build that page, but there was no WordPress theme structure generated, no ACF field or Elementor on the back end. CSS is big mess. And when we gave that to a developer, they said, this is junk, cannot use it. And we weren't expecting a miracle out of it. Anyways, it's just to say that we've been trying it since then. Then we use Claude Code. This is the reason I wrote classic there is this is before it was able to do tooling in a way that it does right now, skill files and all of that. It did have a reasoning, and we can put that reasoning in a loop where it will go get the design, build it, reason through it, keep building it. That process, that was much better, because now we were able to give a better system prompt around how we wanted it to build the website. It did build a WordPress website. it did have a theme file that we can actually install in WordPress. We run it. However, things like contact forms, it's not going to be gravity forms, right? Animations, no. Responsive breakpoints, it will take on its own, which is somewhat all right. But if I were to put a percentage on it, internally we were saying that we go to the 25%. From the developer's perspective, this 25% is not useful. They said they will spend more time fixing than starting from the fresh. So it was no go. Next, then, in the last 6 months or so, what changed is the agents and the skills, right? And then we already had a problems statement, opportunity area that we wanted to work on. This is something we had already thought a lot about it. We did have some groundwork already done in terms of how we can instruct it to build the proper architecture. So instead of just giving the designs to Cloud Code or something, Codex or something like that, and saying build this website, we actually build an agent orchestration architecture. So there's an orchestrator agent and the different areas of WordPress delivery. Now, even before AI, we've been building WordPress website for years and years, and we have built thousands of websites. So we do have that inherent knowledge, understanding of what goes into building a site out, what are some of the critical areas. So we had this orchestration agents and then multiple skill files for specific things. So we'll run the agent, we'll see what didn't work, we'll go and update the skill file or build a new skill file. We have tons of skill files now. This was with this use case, we were getting from 25% earlier to 30 to 40%. We were hoping that this thing will get us to that 70-80% line, but in reality it did not. Some of the skill files we had, for example, like many of you right now, Playwright is probably the most popular tool out there to do a QA. So we had a Playwright skill where Playwright will open, launch a website. Once the agent will build a site, Playwright will run and will QA the site, come up with the bugs, give it to the main agent. Main agent will rework it, and that will go on for loop. So it wasn't like it was not a production ready. This 30-40%, I really mean it. It wasn't just a demo. It is a good 30-40%. Still, developers, they were not happy with it. So we dig deeper into the process and saying, how can we go from 30 to 40 to that 70%? And this is another skill file example, for example, for front end. So everything that we learned building sites, we were putting that into the skills and improving this agent. What we learned and what was the big unlock, it wasn't just the agent, it wasn't the capability of the LLM or reasoning or tooling or those things. It was actually the Figma, for example, in this case, for example, as a designer, when you're creating a Figma file and you leave two logos on a header accidentally, when that goes to the developer and when developer is building that site and they'll notice two logos, guess what they're going to do? They'll say, oh well, the site doesn't need one logo, so I'll only use one logo, right? Because human will make that judgment. Same thing for another example, naming standards. The designer who's working on Figma, they don't have to name things properly. Developers, they'll look at the design and they figure that out. Designer may mark some areas hidden. They were working on a layer and they thought, I don't need this layer, and they'll mark it as hidden. That's fine. Developer would understand it and will just ignore that. What happened was, when you give that same Figma file to an agent, agent is not looking at that file the way humans do, right? Agent is looking at the design node of each of the component in the Figma file. So it's going to see that extra logo. It's going to see that hidden layer. It's not going to be able to understand the page the way human does. And it's actually going to build all those things. And that's why we were getting all those errors. And we started creating a list of these things that needs to be fixed first on the Figma file so that the agent can do its job. Now, this was something completely new, right? It didn't exist in our company. We didn't have a process where first, before we build a site, and now we have to work on the Figma file, which didn't really materially added anything, right? If we did this before, but for an AI agent to do it, this became a materially big thing, that if this didn't happen, the output, we won't go past the 30-40%. So what we did is, well, we built in Figma agent, and what that agent does, it goes into the Figma and it will, marks for example, agent needed auto layout applied. If it wasn't applied, it'll apply the auto layer. It'll remove the hidden layers. It'll essentially QA that Figma file, and according to our standards, it will change a lot of the things. Now, even today, about 70% of those changes the agent is able to do, and the rest 30% human still designer has to go into that Figma file and still has to manually update it. And we are constantly working on how do we make that better. But even with that 70%, our input that we get, that we give a Figma file to a Cloud agent with all the skills and orchestration layer, and we hit run, and few hours later we have a site that is 50 to 60% ready. That's saving, for a typical project, that's saving like 20-30 billable hours. That's a huge gain that we are seeing on this right now. This agent has been in production for 4 months now. That initially we built it for ACF on the backend. Then we figured out it for the Elementor, which was a very different approach, because ACF and Elementor, for those who are in, you don't need to get into technicalities, but just knowing that the ACF Elementor, they work very differently even within the WordPress environment, right? So the same agent that did work for ACF, it's not going to work for Elementor. So I had to figure that out. Every edge cases that were coming as we put this in the production environment, we go back and fix and keep making the agent better. For us, investing all of this time into this agent makes sense because we have a volume. So again, I want to go back to what I said earlier in this talk. It may not make sense for you to build this agent, but the idea is, you think about your agencies and your delivery systems and what is it that has the volume, and it does make sense for you to solve it. Figma, in this case, was a new class of problem that we had to solve, and AI changes what ready means. The third example that I want to talk about is not all the sites have designs created, right? There are lots of projects where either a timeline is short or the budgets are small, that it doesn't justify to build an entire website design first before you go into development. So many of the agency partners, they come to us and they will say something like, here's my client, they have a tight either a timeline or a budget. Here's their existing site, we like to revamp that site using some page template, and we want this done quickly, right? And because that's the idea. In reality, what happens is those projects don't have any structured brief created, and you start that with a simple email or a simple task that we want this site recreated using some page templates in Elementor, for example. When we start working on that, what happens is, since it didn't go through a proper discovery, there's no design, so there's a lot of open-ended things that we as a developers will need to know and ask our clients, right? Hey, how do you want the forms? What fields do you want on the form? How do you want the navigation, etc., etc.? And what that creates is, what initially thought like, you don't want to invest a lot in a short time, let's just use a template. 3 weeks later, the site is still not done. And the problem here is not technology, it's just a communication issue, right? So with this workflow, what we are solving is not anything to do with the technology at all. Actually, it's solving that communication problem. Is when those sites come, and they come frequent, we do lots of those sites, how do we build them faster and actually solve for that communication bottleneck about receiving the proper brief and having all the proper information, so that we can quickly use one template and populate it with copy and quickly go live with it. So what we did here is we built a self-serve onboarding form, where either the agency partner we work with or their clients, they will fill this form out, right? What's their current website URL? What's the brand color theme that they're looking for? What's their copy strategy? Are we doing new copy? Are we having AI generate new copy? In terms of images, are we using same images from the website? Do you like us to create new images? Are we using stock images, etc., etc.? Here for the example, I've included 4 questions. In reality, this form is about 44 questions long to collect all the information. But this is not just collecting information for the sake of collecting. You'll see what happens from this information. Once we have this information, so there's no back and forth in emails about getting the clarity on how the site should be built. We are collecting that information in this self-serve onboarding form. Once that's collected, the next step is we show them a template gallery, and these templates are simple HTML pages from popular templates, for example from Elementor. So you're actually seeing Elementor templates in its HTML form, and we have built this in that template gallery. The client agency or a client will select one of the templates that they like. So in this case, I'm selecting a soft pastel here. Then what happens is we use an open source sort of a lovable type of experience, Bolt. I don't know if people are familiar with the Bolt is open source. We use Bolt here, and what Bolt does is it takes that self-serving onboarding form, the first step, all the information about the project, which template does the client wants to use, and put that together and have a visually working site for them to see. So now there is no back and forth on this side. Now they can approve things like, oh, I don't like the logo the way it's here. I'd like to change this text. Those type of things, just like Lovable, they can, in the Bolt here, they can change those things. So for here, for example, have asked us to add a new section here. And again, this is just happening in a plain HTML. Idea here, it's the second workflow where I talked about, where the goal was to get to the production site. Here the goal isn't to get to the production site, the goal is to cut the communication time. So whenever the agency or a client, they feel like, this is close to the type of site that I'm looking for, then there is a button. That's when they send this work to the developer. So now when that works actually comes to the developer, all the things are defined in there: color themes, images, content, the logo placement or nav, or what should go into the footer, all of that thing. So the back and forth that was happening for 3 weeks, all that is gone because of this system. So this is a very completely different example from the first or second. But AI isn't just about like having your coding work faster, but using it to solve other problems in the agency, such as removing the communication bottlenecks. Okay, the same pattern showed up everywhere in all these use cases. First is inputs for SEO workflow. The input is what's ranking right now in Google and what they are talking about. For WordPress, it was about Figma not being standard. For this, the last one, the Elementor workflow, it was about collecting all the information from the first step. So whichever workflow you want to work on, you really need to, it may not come to you immediately, but it's about thinking about what is the input, what does the input AI need to start with, thinking about that. Then AI is going to need that information in some structure. SEO workflow, it was about having keywords and a brief, getting it to that Figma prep agent was doing something, so that the next step the agent was able to work on it, right? Getting to that structure is very important. Human gates, I'm not here saying that tomorrow or even in 6 months or even a year the agencies are going to drastically change. I think we are slowly going towards that future of agency delivery. It's not happening overnight. There's going to be lots and lots of human involvement right now. It's that, what I said at the start, the softwares are not yet driving the processes fully, but slowly we are building these systems so the softwares do drive the system more and more every day, every week, every month for your agency delivery. Then improving these systems weekly. Doesn't matter what you build, it's not going to be perfect. Probably it won't be perfect ever. The whole idea is like keep improving it and keep getting it better and better. As long as the results that you're aiming for, those are some the results that would actually move a bottom line for your agency. This were just some examples of what I've been doing internally, what we've been doing internally at A2M. But there are a lot of small stuff that we've been doing. My favorite is the stat finder agent. When a writer was writing an article, they always like to include relevant statistics into the article. Google also likes it. So they want to do that. But the content writers themselves are not subject matter expert of what they're writing. So even, the way they come up with stat is they'll Google, they'll go out there and find a relevant stat that on average we measured that was taking more than 10 minutes to find that relevant stat that they should include into the blog copy, right? We took that problem and we said, well, this is very easy to solve. We can, take the entire blog copy, use that as the prompt, Google search, and find out the stats and give all those stats included in the blog copy for the writer. And then a human gate here is writer will either then approve or disapprove. If they like those stats, they'll use it, they'll probably double check it. But now that 10 plus minute is 2 plus minute, right? So there are a lot of these small use cases as well, and sometimes those small use cases is going to build that agentic delivery for you, and sometimes you have to rethink entirely from end to end and build, for an example of Figma to WordPress, very end to end, like a large work that you're taking and you're turning that into an agentic system. Your Thursday checklist, you will be busy today, tomorrow for this amazing event. Thursday, the way I like you to think about is picking one of the workflows for your agency that is repeatable. It takes time. That's a good place to start. Write it down how it works today, and then from this talk, I wanted to you to go back and think about it. Does it make sense the way it works right now? Should that be changed for AI or not? Right? Don't skip this step. This is really important. Identify what's the messy input that would need to get converted into a structured output. Then build your first AI step. Do add a quality gate, a human gate as needed, depending on the workflow, and run 3 real jobs using that. See what breaks, and iteratively keep improving that. Thank you for listening. I do have one free resource to give away, and that is the agent that we have built in Claude to take your Figma into an ACF. In the backend, there will be ACF, but taking the Figma into a WordPress website, the agent that I talked about with all the skills and everything, if you scan this, we'll provide that for you. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. The session was really insightful, and I hope the viewers will get insights that they can implement in their business. So we are right on time. Can I see some emojis for Ronik, as the presentation was really good, and uh, hopefully you all learned something new from Ronik. So I can see a lot of emojis for you, Ronik. So let's we jump on the Q&A session. I can see there are a lot of questions for you, but I can take few of them. uh, the question is, as AI agents become more capable, how do you preserve the creativity, empathy, and strategic thinking that clients expect from an agency partnership?
I think that's a good question, and that's really important. And that's why I said that there's a never end to this process. You'll always have to keep updating those workflows as things change. For example, SEO, it's always evolving, right? Even if you don't do anything in 2 years, things will change the way you do it right now. So you'll have to continuously keep changing those things. And I don't think we have an answer to creativity and AI, right? There's a huge gap there. That gap would slowly get shortened, but we do need to acknowledge that there is that gap, and not everything needs AI in it, especially in a lot of the creative works, if it makes sense, right? But at the same time, I wouldn't stop from trying just because of that. I would definitely give it a shot and iterate few times and see. Sometimes, you'd be shocked what AI is even able to do creatively.
So I can also take one more question. So as a beginner, should we start learning the things in AI and how it works, or can we directly use AI for building agents and automate the things?
I think you'll have to define. I think the both happens side by side. You're learning and you're implementing, and from that implementation work, you're learning more, and it's kind of that process. So I don't. I think they're one and the same thing. The great way to learn is by doing something. So pick a problem, start to figure out how you're going to solve it, and in that process, you'd automatically learn lots of things.
So, Ronik, I would request you to keep yourself engage in the Q&A session. We have a lot of questions for you. So if you hang around in the Q&A session, you can reply to those questions. I think we are right on time. We have an upcoming activity lined up. So thank you, Ronik, for your time. And it was great talking to you. And I hope the people will also listen and learn something new from you. So thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
Dennis.
for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for inviting me.
Uh, so it was Ronik who was discussing how you can build your agency using AI. The next is the activity. We have lined up multiple activities for you to engage and participate and win. So the upcoming activity is decode the emojis, the agency version. So Brent Weaver will conduct this activity, and it is your chance to participate and win big prizes. And then after that, we have multiple sessions lined up. We have a panel discussion, we have solo presentations. So stay tuned, we will be back with the activity.